All right. Hello. Oh my gosh, Chris Trondsen, you're here. What's going on?
I know. I have a question about that theme song. So is that like a real song, or somebody like wrote and made that song for this?
So Paul Melia, who is a guy I know from Ireland, he's watched some of these shows, and he does a podcast in Ireland about music, but he had me come on his podcast to talk about OCD because he has OCD. He's out about it and everything. And then I've had him on here, but he is a musician himself, and that is from one of his albums. And I loved that song, and I just thought it was such a great tune. And I asked him for permission to use it on the show, and he said, absolutely, that'd be great. So that has become the official theme song of the show. It is called Hold On to the Colors, and it's by Paul Melia from Ireland.
So, awesome. No, I knew it was a song, but it took me a second until today. It hit me. I was like, oh, I've heard that song, but it's a real song. Like somebody, that's cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
We all need that in our lives.
Right. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome once again to the Wednesday night webinar brought to you by NoCD. NoCD, a downloadable app you get through Google Play or iOS. Check us out. And we do teletherapy across the United States, as well as Canada, the UK, and Australia as well. And you can go to www.nocd.com. I'm so happy tonight to have my friend Chris Trondsen here. And Chris, you've got, I believe, you've got something cool coming up this weekend, which I might be involved in as well, too. I just wanted to say as well, too.
Yeah, so shout out to NoCD, which, by the way, at OCD SoCal, we get a lot of people reaching out about different therapy options. So we always tell them about you guys. So thank you for all you're doing. You make so many people are able to access care because of what NoCD does. And obviously, you have a big part in that. But yeah, no, so this Saturday, OCD Southern California, we are an official affiliate nonprofit of the International OCD Foundation. So we are having our 6th annual virtual conference, so anyone from anywhere can attend. We have a bunch of great speakers. NoCD is one of the sponsors, and Dr. Patrick McGrath is one of our speakers. Actually, he's doing a double duty. He's doing a talk, and then he's part of our wrap-up panel at the end, which is awesome. But it's just a great day for people with OCD, for community, meeting other people with a disorder, and hearing from experts all over the world. And it's virtual, and we're recording it. So if you want to come, but only for a bit, or can't make it, if you register, you are able to access those videos for up to 60 days. So if you go to ocdsocal.org, once again, that's ocdsocal.org, you are on our website, and we have where you can register, email us, and yes, but we're excited. I mean, I'm excited for your talk, Patrick, because I still have your book. I'm trying to do the finger point.
Yeah.
But no, I did. The talk you're doing at OCD SoCal, I actually went to it many years ago. But what I love about it, besides you being funny, is just it is that thing. Like I think with OCD in general, with stress, anxiety, and everything, we try to do the same thing harder, thinking it's going to get us there. But you talked about just smarter ways to handle stress, and still use some of that today. So I'm excited that you're going to do that talk. It's always been extremely popular. So we're honored to have it at OCD SoCal.
I can't wait. So it'll be a lot of fun, and it'll be good to be with the panel too. So that's always fun.
Yeah, excited to have the panel. And last thing I was going to say is we have so many people have generously donated money. So we have a lot of scholarship tickets. It's already low cost, but if somebody can't, if money's a factor, if they email us at info@ocdsocal.org and request a scholarship ticket, we will give it to you. You don't have to give us some W-2 or anything crazy. Just email us. So
how's the registrations looking? Good this year?
Good. So we are at 700. So so we kind of beat where we were last year. We ended up with 850, and then we had another 150 people register after for the videos. And then we have been giving out a lot of the scholarship tickets, which aren't part of the ticket sales. So I think we've given out like 120 scholarships. So we just want people to get help and get information. And I know we're going to be talking about NoCD also, because there's a talk about OCD and insurance. And I know you guys have done a lot to get insurance to cover treatment. So we're going to be talking about it too, but it's just going to be a good event. And we're always honored that NoCD and you are going to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, good to be here. Hey, let's get into some of our scroll and see what we got going on. And of course, Chris, feel free if you want to scroll through as well. You see something that catches your eye and you want to grab onto it, please go right ahead. So Brian's going to start. He says, I have my anxiety's out of hand, and I have anxiety and panic to the point where I can't walk. My body stops me and I get weak. So how will ERP work for someone like me? What do you think? Well, I'm wondering, is it that you can't walk or that you won't walk? By the way, one of the things I talk about in my Don't Try Harder, Try Different talk, right? Brian, I would say if you can't walk, that's a very different experience than you won't walk when you're anxious, right? And if you're saying that your body stops you, my goal in therapy is just to start with very little things. Let's take one step and go from there, right? I don't need you to walk across the room. I don't even need you to walk toward anything that you're afraid of. I need you to take one step and allow yourself to realize, even though my brain is telling me that I can't do this, I absolutely can do it. I have the ability to do it. I've never lost the ability to do it. And therefore, it is a possibility that my brain is lying to me in some of these instances. And if that's the case, and it's lying to me about this, maybe it's lying about certain other things as well, too. And I just maybe don't have to believe everything that I'm hearing inside of my head.
Yeah, I mean, you said it correctly. I that was my first thought, is when it says I can't walk, is something else going on there? But if it's genuinely because you're so anxious and you're having panic, I think what happens is when we have anxiety and panic, we misread that as, hey, this is dangerous, I can't do it. And I think that's the most insidious thing about having OCD, is our gut and our feelings tell us not to do something. And the therapist is like, go do it. But what happens when you do ERP is you teach yourself that although it's difficult, you can do it. So you already said it, slowly, one step at a time. I remember when I was at my worst, it's like all I would tell myself is just roll on your side, put a foot down, the next foot down, stand up, get up, walk to the kitchen. So if you have to break it down, do it.
I mean, Chris, you've had that too, where you were stuck in bed or in your room and felt like you couldn't leave or those types of things. So you've been through exactly what Brian's describing there.
Yeah, there'd be times I'd want to get out of bed at 8 a.m. and it would take me till 4 p.m. because it was just, am I going to do it right? Sometimes it was just the thought of doing all my compulsions were so overwhelming I could barely move. What I found helped is break everything down to small mechanics. The more you deal with like thinking and feeling, OCD lives there. So when I really just broke it down to like walk over and just grab a bowl and set it down, walk over, grab the cereal, pour it, milk, put in mouth, almost like I was like, like a little kid again. That was when I would get that momentum and get going. And then once you're going, it's a lot easier. It's that first couple steps that is so heavy.
And please tell me if, I'm stepping too far, but can I ask you one question about that for your own? Of course. What's it like to look back at Chris then versus Chris now? I mean, do you recognize that person? Or I'm just curious how you've almost got from us knowing each other well enough now. And by the way, congrats, you're the leading now comer honor of this program with your third appearance. But it's always so fun for us to do each other's shows, and I love it. Knowing you as you are now, it's and I've treated this for so long, but it's still, I got to really put in my head what you describe yourself, what you were like back then. And how do you see that whole experience?
Yeah, what my sister said it the best. We were part of a documentary together last year, and she was just like, Chris, I didn't recognize you. She had gone off to college, and when she came back, I had been like 2 years, like it had been 2 years since I saw her, and it was like, my worst. And she's like, I didn't even recognize you. I mean, I have a picture of myself at a birthday where I'm holding a card, and you can just see the redness in my hands and the cuts and just everything. I don't recognize myself. I mean, I think that was the scariest part of severe OCD, is I didn't know who I am. And it's scary. I mean, I always tell everybody, my clients or people that are friends and stuff, I'm like, if you would have seen me back then, I was isolated, didn't talk. You would think I was like shy or something, which clearly I'm not, but I was just a skeleton of myself, and you wouldn't recognize me. I looked different. I mean, I got so bad because of OCD. I mean, I was about 70 pounds lighter than I am right now. I mean, I need to lose a little bit from COVID, but even if I got to my normal weight, I was still a good 60 pounds lighter than that. I looked sick. And when I look back at pictures of that, I was sick. I was pale because I never left the house, still a little pale, but I mean, like see-through pale. I was just a shell and a mess. And I think that's why we get so defensive when people misuse OCD, is because the disorder wasn't about organizing pens and giggling. It was literally life or death. And there's times where my health had just suffered from the OCD. So when I look back at old pictures or think about it, sometimes it's just, I'm still to this day, like struggle to even go there because it was so dark.
All right. Well, Doodle Dial says, hey, I had therapy with Chris. He was instrumental in helping me take back my life. So I want to say thank you. And thank you, Dr. McGrath, for continuing all the work you do. OCD can be beaten, but not by force. You must starve the beast. Only by cutting out compulsions can you be the you that you wish to be. Excellent, excellent advice. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the kind words.
Kayla says, how do we know if a childhood experience was normal or if it was a mistake that we should forgive ourselves, be compassionate to ourselves for?
Yeah, the hard thing is, a lot of people that have real event OCD where they fixate on an event that happened in the past and they're very judgmental. When I talk to my clients, they were 10, 12, 14, 16, and it's like, look, nobody had the best clear mind back then, but you're not looking at it from a whole lens. I mean, the OCD is almost a filter, and it's having you go in there and look at everything you did, like an incident like that, and wants you to beat yourself up. And the problem is it's the past. We can't do anything about it. And last that I checked, we don't have time traveling yet. So what the treatment really is asking you to do is to let it go and to just recognize that there is nothing we could do now about it. There may be lessons that we could pull from it and we could, grow as people, and that's kind of life. But, the OCD is incessantly going to beat you up from that. And so I love the work that a lot of people do, including Kim Quinlan, about self-compassion for OCD, because when you listen to OCD, it's one of the harshest, most negative voices that we can have.
And I'll say this, I have no idea what normal is.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember from graduate school one time, we I think had come up with 10 different ways to describe what's normal. There's by your nation you live in, by the state you live in, by the region you live in, by the culture you come from, by the religious background that you have, by the orientation that you are. There's what the heck is normal? I just don't know. But OCD says you should know and you should find out what it is, and then you should compare something against that. And guess what? Once you start comparing things with OCD, you lose, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've never once met someone with OCD said, I compared myself to someone else and I did really well, or I did better than other people did. It's always these negative, awful, horrible things that people are doing, right?
Yeah, none of my clients ever came in here and was like, yeah, on the way in, I saw this really like homeless looking person. I'm like, I'm better than them. It's always looking at like friends and family and we always compare down. And so it's a losing game. And you're so right about things being normal is so different. And I think that was one of the most fascinating things when I went to college, learning about other cultures. It's like, there is no real normal. Look, one year you're going to come to Greek Easter because I'm Greek and it's a different, it was Sunday. And we have this game where you take a red egg and you crack it like point to point and then flat to flat. And whoever ends up with no cracks or only one crack wins, and you get good luck for a year. And when you crack, you say Christos Anesti. Anybody watching my family do that would think we're psycho and weird, but it's so normal to my culture. And so I think people with OCD get so fixated as like, I'm different than them. But the problem is there is no societal norm. And so just don't let OCD have you compare it to losing game.
And remember, in OCD, there's really not necessarily mistakes. There's willful aberrations that you chose to do, and how dare you have done them, and you should have known better, and what a horrible person you are for not being wiser than you were, even if you were 4 years old when you did it, and you should have known better. And it's just, it's you.
You're literally saying what my brain used to say.
Yeah.
Were you in it? Were you there?
I might have. I'll tell you this: with not having OCD, the greatest compliment I've ever received from someone was, though you don't have it, you think like you do, because you tell me what my brain is telling me in a way that my brain does. I was like, well, that is about the greatest compliment ever. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yes, exactly. Very true.
So, Kayla, I can't tell you if something was normal or a mistake. A, I don't know what it was, but B, I don't need to know what it was either, because once OCD is involved in it, there's no answer that you're going to like, right? If it was normal, then you should have been better than normal. And if it was a mistake, then you shouldn't have made the mistake. So either way, you're going to lose in that experience.
Yeah. Don't play the game. You won't win.
Co Rin says how to introduce the topic of OCD to someone 15 years old who has it but may not know about OCD, so they aren't receiving help and they have been doing the compulsion since the pandemic.
Yeah, so it sounds like somebody who are they saying that, who has, yeah. I think one thing that happens for us is we get good at seeing other people with OCD. I remember I went to a wedding once, and anytime I went to the bathroom, there was somebody washing hands. And I'm very aware, obviously, that's not the only subtype, but it was something where they were like scraping and stuff. And, it always depends. I mean, it sounds like this person's probably a friend of yours. And so I always tell people, think about the medium that they get their news from. So if they're really good at podcasts, or if they like live streams, or like to read books or watch movies, find something that talks about what OCD is. If you could find something that's similar to the subtype, that's even better. But what you would do is you would pass that information on and say, hey, I don't want to kind of like step bounds, but I noticed some of the things that you're doing seem similar to things I'm doing with OCD, or what OCD is. Just listen to this podcast if you feel like it's something you might be dealing with. The thing I like about NoCD's website is you also have articles. You have a lot of information on your website, a lot of really good stuff. So I would say, you're already connected with NoCD. I would say definitely like find an article if they like to read. And sometimes there's videos in the articles as well. And so just share that with them. And, if there's somebody that gets defensive, kind of back off. If there's somebody that loves conversation about things, send it to them and engage a conversation.
Not to toot a horn here, but I wrote a book called the OCD Answer Book, which is just a bunch of questions and answers about OCD. So the answers are 2 paragraphs at most. It might be a nice, easy way just to hand somebody something and say, I see you do this a lot, and look, someone wrote about it in a book. Maybe it has a name, and that might be something just to help connect somebody to something as well too.
Well, I love on page 86, the question is like, who's the most charming person to ever be on your live stream? And it's
Chris Trondsen, of course. Yeah,
like, this book, everybody better get it.
Everybody. Jasmine says, whenever I fall asleep at a friend's house and wake up, I have a panic attack, and it's triggered because my brain makes me feel like I'm not sure where I am for a second. Sure. Well, that could happen. I mean, there are some people who, once they are not feeling like they're in their typical surroundings, might have a bit of a panic experience. But what are tips? I would say keep making sure that you're going out to other people's homes and staying there, and allow yourself to get used to the fact that you're doing it. Because I don't know how old you are, Jasmine, but maybe as you get older and you go to college, you'll be in dorm rooms, or if you stay in a sorority house or something, there will be places and times that you will fall asleep, and maybe you'll app somewhere, and maybe then you wake up in a different spot too that's different from your bedroom. So allow yourself, even with naps, to make sure it's not always in your bed but you're somewhere else, and allow yourself the opportunity to wake up not exactly knowing where you are, and to allow your brain and your body to react to that over time in a different way.
And I always tell people too, is like, change your relationship with the panic. I mean, right now we think that anytime we have panic, we got to do something about it. But, panic is going to happen. We all experience it. So the best thing we can do is think of it as like a roller coaster. When you're on a roller coaster, you're going to feel all kinds of sensations. And sometimes it's not always pleasant, depending on your fear of heights, like mine. So what happens is, while you're on it, you kind of just know it will eventually end. You just don't know when, and you kind of just sit back and take the ride. So I think a lot of times we think if we have a panic attack, something must be done because of it. Don't do anything. And like Dr. McGrath said, try to wake up in the most different places, like you said, not too crazy.
Yeah.
If you're over 21 to 25, you're going to wake up in odd places, but outside of that, don't do it. But yeah, just staying at more friends' houses. An example would be, if your friend wants to come to your house, just say, hey, can we stay a night at your house instead? Things like that proactive exposures really help.
Yeah. I didn't know you had a fear of heights, Chris. I will have to show you my bungee jump pictures someday so you can see them.
And you want to hear the weirdest thing about it is, like, it's so bad that I'll watch a movie. Like, I saw Spider-Man, and Spider-Man, in the movie that I saw, he's on the Washington Monument, and I'm sweating in the theater. And the weird thing is, it's not a normal fear of heights. Like, if there's a rooftop restaurant that's like safe, put me on it. It can be 8,000 feet up. But if I watch even a video, I think it's in Las Vegas, you can, on the top of one of those tall hotels you can do a roller coaster.
Oh, I did it on the stratosphere. Yeah, I did.
Why? I watched that video and I'm sweating. I can't breathe. It is the weirdest thing. And it's like I said, it's odd. It's things like that just don't make sense. If it's being on top of a roof and it's railings, fine. But things like that, no, you're crazy.
Oh, wait. I'm going to grab my picture. Hold on one second. Okay. It's right here. Wait one moment.
All right. So what you're seeing him do is he's going to go torture me. But as somebody that has to do ERP because I have OCD and I'm a therapist, This is always good. I was building the scene that you're about to freak me out.
Facing fears. All right. So there's me standing at Nevis. All right. There's that. There's me jumping off of Nevis.
Goodness.
And there's the side view of me jumping off.
Oh no. See, I would be, with my luck, you would see the picture, but then it would just keep going because the thing would snap and it would be me at the bottom, and they'd still take the picture and sell it to you, for a souvenir.
Just to give an idea. There's it is. And there's where you jump to. It's 500 feet.
Oh no.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. He's crazy. I don't know if I can do this anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it's awesome. I did but like I said, to all my clients, I always tell them you got to face your fears. When I went to Hawaii, I did parasailing, and that was crazy, but so much fun. So
awesome. Jasmine says also how to manage your OCD. Oh, this is for you. Even when it's giving you the most bizarre thoughts ever.
It will. I mean, I wish OCD was about thinking about pizza, Game of Thrones, and sleep, because I would want it. But I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, the types of thoughts that we have, whether it's harm thoughts, sexual intrusive thoughts, sexual orientation, etc. The way that I look at it is anything that we think is undesirable or scary or unpleasant, the OCD is going to fixate on it, and it's going to have you experience those thoughts over and over. But when I finally learned that, hey, that's what OCD does, it provides me with really insane, weird thoughts like that, bizarre. My job doesn't have to be to then sit there and spend the next 6 hours tuned out from the world, replaying them and focusing on them and doing mental compulsion. So, it took me some time, but, after a while, I'd get an extremely bizarre thought, oh, you're going to push that kid in the middle of the street because he's screaming so loud and it's driving you crazy. And you kind of just get to a point that you're like, oh, cool. I hope nobody sees me. I don't like jail or something like that. I mean, you start to use humor, you start to play back with a thought, and it weakens its strength.
Mm-hmm. Boyce says, Doc, I have imaginative images of something touching my face and get a strong reflex response from my body, which makes me uneasy. Some people don't online say it's OCD, can have hallucinations. Is this accurate? Can you explain the difference between patients with poor insight and good insight? Does poor insight increase with severity of the disorder? So when we're looking at insight in OCD, really we're taking a look at does someone have the experience, and then are they able to say, I recognize that didn't happen, but what if it did, right? Or I'm rather confident that isn't real, but what if it is, kinds of things. Whereas people on the poorer insight, or with the no insight that they now call like delusional level type of OCD, of full 100% head-on belief that OCD is real and these thoughts are absolutely real, and yet and there's still compulsions that are being done, but we have no evidence of these things, right? So it can be harder, obviously, Chris, I think you'd agree, to treat people with lower levels of insight into their OCD, right? And sometimes even in those instances, a little bit of an atypical antipsychotic medication can be helpful because it cuts down on the almost delusional hold of the belief system. And it gives someone the ability to take a step back and kind of recognize that that is just a thought or an image or an urge, and I don't have to believe it to be true or real or something of that nature. Now, this idea of picturing something or thinking that you feel something touching your face or getting a strong reflex from your body, we see this all the time in people who have somatic types of OCD, who will focus on various parts of their body. Did they blink right? Did they breathe right? Did they move something in the right way? And if they didn't, could it harm them? So they have to go back and do it again to make sure they did it the right way. So I don't want to throw this, just from this obviously small description here, into this is a poor insight. I mean, and And I think, Chris, you'll agree with me there, where it says some people online
run from that statement.
run away. There was a big hubbub about that recently, so just because someone online says something doesn't mean that it's true or real, which is funny because you and I are online right now saying these things, but except always believe everything Chris says. Yeah. But that, like, it reminds me, I remember treating someone who went on Reddit, and she was looking up sexual orientation OCD, and hundreds of people on there saying, oh, that's what sexual orientation. And then someone came on and said, nope, all of you just want to be blank, whatever it was. And she instantly is emailing me, are they right? Is that true? I know what you said, and I know what the hundreds of other people said, but what if they're the right one? And that's all it takes, is one person online to say something, and suddenly it sets everybody off, and wondering if, well, maybe that person has suddenly become the expert in the world on this thing, and they are the only opinion that counts, and nobody else is right or understands anything.
Absolutely. And I wanted to answer the last part where he said he was asking, does poor insight increase with severity of the disorder? I mean, I will say, like, one good thing that comes out of ERP, additionally to everything else that comes good out of treatment, is that my insight did get better. I mean, I remember, getting in an argument with a neighbor over a parking spot, and then suddenly getting the intrusive thought that he was going to somehow sabotage my water and I was going to get a disease from drinking my own water. I mean, that felt very real. Obviously, I ended up knowing it was OCD, doing the right thing, but things like that I was easily getting tripped up on, where as I got better, it was a lot harder for the OCD to kind of fool me. So I think that's one of the benefits of the treatment, as well, as you get clarity over time.
Chris, if I had known that was you in my parking spot, I wouldn't have.
I know. I was like, Patrick, like, please, leave my water alone. I don't want to die of poisonous. I don't even know what I was afraid of, but just thought. Yeah. And it's so funny because it's like anybody else's subtype, they would have thought that thing would happen. If their fear was like, something else, they would have thought that. But yeah, my water, I guess, was fine because I'm here. So.
Tin Man says, today I was overwhelmed by triggers contamination due to several messes I had to clean up along with work stress. I'm exhausted and anxious. What to do after a day like this? Rest or more exposures? Well, I'm always more exposures kind of guy, right? I think that's awesome.
Yeah, when we look at it as exposures as actually an opportunity to gain freedom back, and really visualizing like what this is going to open up for you, you may physically be exhausted, absolutely, but the more exposures you do, you're just doing that for your future self and your future. Like, I always think back to my younger self who did the treatment, and I'm like, thank you for fighting, because I would not be talking. I wouldn't be right here right now, right, if I didn't do the hard work. So I know Tin Man, which is a cool name, by the way, I know that at times it feels good to just take like a break, but I always tell people OCD doesn't take a break. So we got to be as tenacious as it is.
And remember, it's not just exposures, it's making sure you're doing response prevention too. That is so key, right? And I know sometimes it's easy to shorten it to say exposures or exposure therapy, but just as a reminder, everyone, and Alec Pollard did a talk years ago that I've always loved the title: exposure minus response prevention equals a recipe for disaster, right? You just because you're being exposed to things, that's not the treatment, because that happens every day. The response prevention component is the treatment. Right?
I remember seeing a talk he did and talking about like a little exposure, but with really big and solid RP is important. And I did a talk with Stephen, obviously of OCD, and I remember he was talking a lot about he was talking a lot about the importance of response prevention, and it's so true. I mean, response prevention is I would argue almost the most important part. So it's making sure that not only are you doing the exposure, but you're doing the response prevention, because that's really where you're teaching yourself, like, I don't need to come in with this like eraser to kind of freak out over what I just did. So make sure you're doing the whole thing.
Hey, we're at the half of the hour. So once again, today's webinar brought to you by NoCD. NoCD downloadable app you get through Google Play or iOS. Check us out. We do teletherapy across the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia. And go to nocd.com and check us out. And you can click that little therapist button if you download the app, and we can set you up for a free 15-minute call to get you in. And we take lots of insurances here at NoCD as well, too. And my friend Chris Trondsen's got something going on this weekend, too.
Yes, and Patrick McGrath is going to be there. OCD Southern California.
What?
We are going to. Yeah,
I was going to cut my
He's all,
grass, but maybe I'll hold off now. Yeah.
He's all cancel that cruise.
Yeah.
Shoot. Yeah, so we are having a virtual OCD conference, and it's virtual, meaning anybody from everywhere can attend. It's all day, 9 to 6 p.m. Pacific Coast time. It is going to feature 42 talks. Patrick is on 2 of them, and they're all recorded. So if you register ahead of time, you can watch them at your own space, and you can go live, so you can ask questions and interact. So head over to OCDSoCal.org. That's where you can see the program, the list of events, and our link to register. And we have a lot of scholarship tickets available, so we don't want cost to be an option. So please, please, please email us at info@OCDSoCal.org if you need a scholarship ticket. And I'll be seeing Patrick there. He's stuck with me on Saturday.
Yeah, man, there goes the weekend. All right. Jessica Lewis, hello. How do you come to peace with things like the afterlife that we can't be sure of, or living with faith, but not sure if God's even real? How do I believe when I'm not sure, but also can't have peace? The idea is that there's no ultimate purpose to life if God isn't real. Well, we do have the OCD and Religion, which is so exciting, conference coming up in just a couple of weeks too, in May. So go to the International OCD Foundation and check out their wonderful conference coming up in May on OCD and religion. And please, please check that out, because we're going to be talking all about scrupulosity at that conference. And we're going to talk about the interactions of OCD and faith and how to treat that. And we were going to do that all the way from Christianity and Hinduism and Muslim and Jewish. And I'm going to be, even because I've treated a lot of people like this, I'm going to take on the role of the person who, how do you help people who don't have a faith deal with scrupulosity? Because you don't have to believe in a God in order to still have scrupulosity. Because you may say, well, I don't think that there's a God, but what if I'm wrong, and still do lots of compulsions anyway? So we're going to talk about all of these things as a part of the work that we're doing at that conference.
Yeah, awesome. And I know you're doing, because we just had a meeting, you're doing a live stream with IOCF on that with Katie O'Dunn on June 21st.
That I am. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to be on your show soon too.
Yes, I was going to say that at the end, but I'll shout it out now. You are going to be on Wednesday, June 22nd on my show. So you will be the most guest, the most frequent guest. You're going to be doing double duty, because you're going to be there Tuesday, Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about both real event OCD and false memory OCD. But yeah, no, I'm glad that Katie and you and everyone is doing a lot on OCD and faith. I know Katie's doing a talk at our conference this weekend too. And I think it's important, because what I would say about scrupulosity is there is so much, with the other subtypes, sometimes you can get your answer, you can try something, do I get sick, etc. But with religion, it's all about faith. You won't have that answer. And we learn to live with uncertainty in other areas, like getting on a car and driving on a freeway, or eating at a restaurant, not knowing if they're cooking the food properly. So it's using that same uncertainty that you already know how to have, and just applying it to this place as well.
And the concept of faith really is belief without proof, right? You don't have total proof in faith, but OCD is not a fan of faith. OCD is a fan of proof. But OCD is the doubting disorder, also never accepts every proof that you give it, because it doubts it anyway. So you're stuck, right?
Yeah, I always say Jesus could come down, or whatever, obviously faith figure you believe, and literally like shake your hand, and you'd still be like, but do you exist though? Like, right. Is it, exactly. In the picture in my church, your hair was slightly shorter. So
yes.
Could this really be, it doesn't work. I mean, I remember calling the CDC because out of fear of getting cancer, because my mom's house was being tented for termites. And even, by the way, if you harass them long enough, they will send you links to information. But even reading that, it wasn't enough. So that's why I tell people, I'm like, I promise you don't want to go on that journey. There will never be okay, I answered this and move on point. There just won't.
Was your house tented for termite, or was Walter White making heroin in your mom's house?
Can we please not do that? My mom, I've looked it up. There is not a statute of limitations. And my mom is finally retiring, and now she's going to be retiring in federal prison because of you. What are you doing? God. Mom, hurry, get rid of the stash.
Breaking Bad, Mom, Breaking Bad.
The safe word. Get out.
Yes. Deluth 13 or Deloitte says, Dr. McGrath, I had a question about resisting compulsions when stress levels are high. For example, if there's an exam or big event coming, do you just go about it as usual? I would love you to, because when you decide, well, I'll only do compulsions when stress levels are high, you're still allowing a place for OCD to live in your life. Now, Chris, I use this example sometimes. That would be like saying, I've decided not to drink unless my stress level's a 10, and then I can go ahead and be a drinker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because with OCD, and in your analogy, like everything starts to become a 10. So pretty soon it's
Exactly.
like, oh, can't do that. Too stressful. Yep. Sorry, got to do the compulsion. I always tell people too, I mean, what's so great is if you can resist compulsions and I would say even a step above, like purposely, do an exposure and then resist the compulsions. If you can do that in a really high stress level, then everyday stuff will seem a little bit easier to resist. So it's those big, I think of it as like a 3-pointer in basketball. Like if you can do it when your stress is high, then the rest of your life time will be easier when you're not that high in stress.
Underdog says, I'm tired of living. And Chris, I'm wondering if you felt that ever in the throes of some of your OCD as well too, and what that was like for you.
Yeah, no, I think one of the lowest points in my life, and I talk about it, kind of openly at this point, but was my suicide attempt. And, it was the lowest moment in my life. And it was because that feeling of being tired of living wasn't going away. And I once again think that's the insidious nature of OCD versus maybe some other disorders, is it's constant. It's like a loop tape in your head, and you feel beaten, and you're putting and exerting so much energy every day to do compulsions, and what it's asking of you is inhuman, and that's why you're just mentally and spiritually just done. And that's why I do what I do, is to go out there and to speak about the disorder and say, look, I could be at that point where I have to go to a hospital, where I have to move in with my family and be watched all the time and can't really feed myself and function, and now be where I am today. And it's because I decided that as much as difficult it was to live each day, I wanted that back. And I kind of tapped into that fight. And all you really need, which helps, is when you finally find somebody, Patrick McGrath, good example, somebody that gets this disorder and will work with you and give you the tools, and you start to realize that there is help and you can get better. And then as you start to realize, it's not that you don't want to live, it's just like you're tired of living how your life is now. Yeah. So hang in there. NoCD has trained therapists who understand and can work with you. And I promise you that if you do the treatment, that feeling of just exhaustion and not wanting to live does lift, and you end up starting to reconnect with the things that you value and enjoy.
Jen says, Dr. McGrath, can you explain why self-compassion is a necessary component of having success with ERP? Chris, you touched on this already, so I'm going to let you start on that first.
Yeah, I would say that OCD, along with depression, such just vicious voices in our head. I mean, we would never speak to other people the way that we allow the OCD to kind of speak and get away with us. And so the idea behind self-compassion is not weakness. When people hear it, sometimes they're just like, well, am I just supposed to be super nice to myself? Like, no, I need to be firm. And I tell people, think about somebody in your life. It could be a teacher, a therapist, a coach who really, inspired you to be your best. Were they ripping you apart and putting you down? No. They saw greatness in you, and they pushed you so that you saw it in yourself and really exerted greatness. And so the idea behind self-compassion is working with yourself to be the best you to fight this disorder. And when you do have a slip up, to instead beating yourself up or putting yourself down or kind of like living in that shame and guilt state, it's really to learn from that and pull the lesson from that. Having my soap right in front of me and saying, I'm just going to do one hand wash, but that was my mistake. Tomorrow, what I'm going to do is see the soap and choose to walk past it and not even wash my hands, so I don't engage in that. That lesson that you learn will create change. Beating yourself up, being harsh, and having no compassion is just going to make you exhausted. Last thing I can add to it too is think about it. Like when we are having a low moment, we turn to our vices. People that want to quit smoking, they're beating themselves up when they're in a low moment, they're going to turn to cigarettes because that's their kind of go-to to feel comfort. So if you're not having self-compassion, you're beating yourself up, the fight that you have in you is exhausted, and you will give into the compulsion. Self-compassion just encourages you to be your greatest and be your best, and to use the tools you have to fight.
I go back to the question earlier too about someone who was concerned about normal or making a mistake. Without self-compassion, no mistake is allowed, right? You're not allowed to goof up or anything like that. And in a world of self-compassion, you can recognize that something maybe didn't go well and you can learn from it and you can build on it. But in a world without self-compassion, you're always at fault and you're always bad and you always should have known better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's the hard world to live in.
All-knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No room for error, no room for being human.
Right. Allie A says, hi, I'm suspicious of everybody except my parents and I cannot trust anybody. Well, OCD can do that. I mean, boy, I remember the fact that it's nicknamed the doubting disorder does mean this, that no matter what anyone tells you, you will doubt it because you don't trust anyone. And also because you can't even trust yourself, right? I mean, there's people who read something over and over again for 30, 50, 100 times because they can't even trust their own brain that they got the information that they needed, even in one sentence, sometimes even in one word. Did I really read that word? Is that really the word? What if it's not the word? Maybe I should read it again. So OCD removes the ability to trust.
And I would, yeah, absolutely. And I would say, Allie, like one thing that I'm guessing is happening in your life is you're keeping people at a distance and you're not connecting with anybody, because how could you if you don't trust anyone? So the promise of being safe, warm, and comfortable that OCD is giving you by questioning everybody has probably left you feeling isolated and alone. So I always tell people that if the OCD compulsions worked, OCD therapists would be working at Applebee's, because no one would want to come and do treatment with us because they're like, these
Screw you
compulsions,
guys,
man, mm-hmm. right? They're just doing great. The reason that people need help is because doing the compulsions, aka being suspicious and doubting everyone and giving into it, is probably leading to a life of loneliness. And so fight back against that. You don't want that.
Also, if compulsions work, we'd be teaching compulsions to people. That would be our job, right? People would come to us because they'd say, hey, Chris, I notice I don't have OCD and I'm wondering if I could get it from you, That's
why all those articles about like people with OCD are handling the pandemic great made me want to run certain people over. I was just like, really? Yeah. I was like, look, I can teach you in a course on how to wash hands perfectly if people will pay me. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, you hit it on the head. People would seek out OCD if it was so great,
Yeah. Can someone have Chris, we already know what the answer to that is, right? Just when the question starts that way. So the answer is yes. I'm not even going to read the rest of the question. I'm just going to say yes. So can someone have OCD around their children? Well, of course. And this could be perinatal. This could be even before you have your child. You could just be pregnant. It could be after having children. It could be years later, all the time. I have thoughts that I don't love my child and end up believing it. It destroys me inside and I feel horrible. So that's Susanna. Remember this one basic comment that I say a lot, and Chris, I know, agrees with me on this too. Just because you think something doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah, and where the compulsions come in is it's behaviors that you're doing mentally or physically that is making it feel more true. So my guess, what a lot of parents would do in your situation with OCD is that they will spend time in their head giving OCD a PowerPoint on why they do love their child. Mm-hmm. And it seems logical. It's like if somebody says they don't love your child, give them 3 pieces of evidence and they'll move on. The OCD is going to keep coming back and you're going to exert so much effort trying to convince the disorder. It's not going to learn. It's not. So the best thing to do is just say, you know what, OCD, thank you so much for that information. Very fascinating. Thanks. And move on. You don't have to answer it. No discussion needed.
I'm just picturing in my head OCD sitting in a desk in a classroom, and you're up at the board. Now, here's my 10-slide presentation on why I love my children.
Yeah.
And at the end, OCD's like, I don't know.
You gave him a kidney. You could have given him 2 and died for him. Like, you're not good. Boo.
Why not both? Yeah, exactly. Or why didn't you find someone else to give him a kidney? Because now that you only have 1 kidney, what if something happens to your kidney and then you won't live as long? And that means you won't be in your child's life as long as you could have been. And that's another reason why you don't love your child, because you didn't do everything to protect yourself.
Exactly. No, I mean, that is happening in somebody's head right now. And it just, you get to a point that, it's like in real life. I mean, if you've ever had a boss or somebody and you're a teacher or somebody who's just absolutely somebody you can't argue with and can't bring proof to, you finally just let them win the argument. You're like, you know what, boss? Yes, it was me who left the lights on last night. I'll make sure to turn them off tomorrow, even though I left at noon and the store is open till 7, which means if I would have turned them off at noon, it would have been dark in the office for 7 hours. But you know what? It was me. Thanks. And you move on. Just no reason to fight it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. OCD is the little brother sitting next to you in the car going, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
Well, I had sisters, and let me tell you, like, they were even worse at it.
They're annoying too.
Like, annoying. Yes, very annoying. Just kidding. Love them totally.
Yes, Trondsen sisters, you heard it here first. Kitty Kate says, how do you deal with thoughts or feelings that you may have had before OCD hit? Do you just not attach meaning to them either? That's what I get stuck on, is I liked thoughts in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, okay. You know, what I would do is the discovery you're trying to do with OCD that's going to bite you in the butt is you're trying to figure out and remember those old thoughts. And then you're trying to remember if you like them or not. And what I would say instead is just go for it. Like, agree with the OCD in a way that there is no argument left to be had. So it's looking at OCD and saying, you are telling me that I like those thoughts. Great. Okay, you won. What's for dinner?
Right.
You know,
Chris, have you ever seen the movie The Toxic Avenger?
No, but it sounds fascinating because I love the Avengers.
It's a horribly amazing B movie of a wimpy kid who gets picked on and thrown into a vat of radiation and comes back as this massive guy and just takes out all of the bullies of his life and everything like that.
Oh my God, it sounds epic.
It's epically fascinating and awful at the same. You must see it. But there's a scene in there where he's driving and he sees one of the kids on a bike and he's like, oh, kid on bike, 50 points. And he runs them over. Right. So
oh my God.
My friends and I, anytime we would see people crossing the street or something, we would assign a point value to them every time we were driving toward them about if we were to run them over, what would it? Now, I could see if I developed OCD after that now I would wonder, should I be punished for that in my past before I had OCD? And is it bad that I liked those thoughts and thought they were funny back then? Because now when I'm driving and I see a pedestrian, I slam on my brakes, you block away just to make sure that I don't hit them.
Yeah. Really good example. Exactly. And it sounds like that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back then it was humorous. It was light. It was funny. But yeah, OCD has a really good way of looking back at old things like that and making them horrible. And, you know, I've had clients, for instance, who I would say like Dave Chappelle, for instance, they would like a before OCD hit, like a Dave Chappelle comedy or something that's a little bit more edgy. Mm-hmm. And then just being absolutely horrified, like, oh my God, I can't believe 15 years ago I watched that YouTuber who's now canceled or something. And it's like, if we go back and constantly guess every single feeling, thought, etc., we had our whole life, not only is it exhausting, but you're not even going back with like a balanced lens. It's almost like you're going into zero in on things that you did that your brain does not like and then torture you, which is why OCD is horrible.
Exactly. I got this question at the last IOCDF conference, and Hirschfield and I were doing it together, and he punted to me. He's like, why don't you take this one? I was like, in my back of my head, I'm like, I'm going to kill you, Hirschfield. But it's one of those times that I was just proud of my answer, because I came out and what you just said reminded me of it. OCD is the greatest cancel culture of all time. OCD will cancel you for anything and everything. Oh, what pretty flowers. That must mean you want to steal them, right? I mean, just, it doesn't matter what you think, you will be canceled by OCD for it.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's move on. Do people with OCD tend to have a hard time? Yes, I'll just say yes before I even finish the question. But okay, do people with OCD tend to have a hard time identifying their emotions? Sure.
Yeah, and there's also a really hard with regulating your emotions as well. You feel such extreme highs and extreme lows, and you feel an array of emotions. I think we always talk about obviously anxiety, but people can feel I was going to say guilt and shame at the same time. Guilt, shame, disgust, game. They could feel guilt, disgust. They could feel embarrassment, envy. I mean, just all these different emotions and stuff. And so Yeah, emotions and OCD, it's difficult because not only is it difficult to identify them or to regulate them, it's just I always say that we talk a lot about intrusive thoughts, but the emotion side of OCD is so important to discuss as well. I'm doing a fun talk with Kim Quinlan, Allegra Castens, and Jessica Serber about shame and OCD at OCD SoCal, and then we're going to do a larger one at the IOCFs. But what I've found fascinating about just getting prepped for that talk is you just realize like how OCD can make you feel so many emotions in like a day, in a week, in a month that an average person
Sometimes
doesn't
in an
feel
hour. I mean,
in a minute, right? So that's part of it too. So that's what I make sure when I'm doing treatment with clients is we definitely identify the emotions and experiences that people have too, because I don't want to only talk about the thoughts, because sometimes people don't have a thought and it's all shame, so then they don't identify it as OCD. They just think like, oh, I must be a bad person, and don't realize.
Yeah, no one with OCD's ever come into my office and said, I'm afraid I'm a good person. We haven't had
I'm afraid I'm going to give too much to charity this year. Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah, I'm afraid everyone will like me and think I'm awesome. That is just not what it is at all whatsoever. No. Does OCD mean it's not true? Interesting question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say not true. I mean, a good subtype where something's not true can be like magical thinking. So, if I don't leave the house when there's a yellow car that drives by, all of my, relatives will die. I mean, that's sometimes when it's just astronomically irrational. I would say sometimes OCD bases off of true experiences. So relationship OCD, one that I struggled with immensely. I mean, you can genuinely have some doubts about the relationship, or your girlfriend or boyfriend could be a little bit distant. The OCD just then latches on and takes it to like an inhuman level. So it might not necessarily be untrue in the sense of the event, but it can definitely make the doubt so loud and create scenarios in your head that aren't true.
Your Majesty says, I have OCD that I can't have confidence because it's fake and looked down upon by God. How in the world can I present myself under this presumption of OCD? Well, OCD can tell you that God says that OCD is fake, but it doesn't mean that that's actually the case. But that sounds like a great OCD statement right there. God thinks this is fake, and you're just faking it, and you just like these thoughts and you want these things to happen and everything like that. But then God would have to look down on depression and anxiety and cancer and leukemia and heart disease, and everything else is fake as well too. And then how can anyone else live with the presumption of those things as well? It's not that you just get to pick one disorder that God said is fake and everyone else of them are real, and you just happen to get the fake one, right? Let's be more honest about something like that, right? But OCD doesn't let us be honest about it. OCD only says, no, this one's fake. Everything else is real. Everything that everyone else has is real, but mine could be fake. And if it is, God will hate it because I'm faking it. If God's hating it, then how can I even live my life knowing that I'm going against what God would want for me?
I'd also add in there, it's like sometimes I just, ask somebody like, is what you're doing helpful?
Yeah.
Is it helpful? And it sounds like it's not helpful at all. And you're struggling how to present yourself and struggling how to exist. And so if the OCD was really something that you want to be helpful and keep around in your life, it's not doing its job. So I think it's always a risk that we take when we have OCD to just drop something, but try it. See what it would be like to not give into these compulsions and to do the response prevention. And look, you already have the coolest YouTube name on the planet, so you're already starting off on a good shoe.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Similar to what you said, one of my very favorite questions to ask people: how is this helping, or how is this getting in the way? Right?
Yeah.
Very rarely do I hear anyone say it's helping, and then when they do and we dissect that a little bit more, they start to recognize that, well, I might have been wrong in that statement, right?
Yeah.
Georgia says, why is it that sometimes I feel an emotion before the thought? Well, because it's the trigger, right? I mean, we can feel emotions before thoughts. I know very often our diagrams talk about we have a trigger, and that's the misinterpretation of a threat that leads to you feeling this way and then this behavior. But the trigger could just be an emotion, right? I mean, sometimes you might smell something in the air and have just a wonderful feeling because that smell reminds you of your childhood. You can have that. or other things happen. So, just because we typically look at that diagram, and that might be how it often happens it's not saying that it has to be 100% that way.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you won't have a thought. And it actually sounds like what you're doing, Georgia, is something where we are so used to having like a thought and a feeling come as a package, right?
They
like
are a package. They are a package. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like if I have to go to a funeral and I have intrusive thoughts about my, morality and about life, all those intrusive thoughts and I'm at a funeral and stuff like that. So those thoughts and those feelings of dread come in. Existentialism, OCD is what I was trying to think of. When you start to have that feeling, you honestly are then automatically like, well, I should have a thought. And then the mistake people do is they try to scan, okay, well, what is wrong right now? What's wrong? Is it this? No. Oh, it's faith. That's wrong. And now you've created a bigger problem than it could occur. So once again, like be present that you're having an emotion. So dread, emptiness, like, it's a temporary experience. I always tell people, like, if you go to a really nice restaurant for your birthday and all your friends are there and everybody's singing and getting you gifts, you don't think that feeling you're having in that moment is going to last for another 6 months. You know that it's going to kind of fade. You're not the birthday boy anymore and you move on. But when it comes to feelings, people are like, this is going to stay forever. And I got to come to I got to figure out why it's there and fix that. And that's a mistake, is we actually create a longer problem. So if you're feeling numbness or a lack of joy, just register it, be noticeable of it, and then choose to do whatever you were going to do regardless before that feeling came.
Well, once again, Chris, we have spent a lovely hour together. I just want to remind everyone, tonight's webinar brought to you by NoCD, a downloadable app you get through Google Play or iOS. Check us out at nocd.com. Call us for a free 15-minute call to see if we can help you with teletherapy through the US, Canada, and also the UK and Australia. And Chris, I wanted to give you one more shout out time for the OCD SoCal this weekend. Take it away.
Well, I'm just mad that you didn't read the comment that says clearly not from Chris. Chris, you are so handsome, smart, and amazing. I mean, you skipped right over that one.
Did I miss that one? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And
I don't know how I could have done
it says clearly not Patrick McGrath. Wow, Patrick, you are so smart and amazing and awesome. These people, I mean, God, I can't even believe they're doing something like that.
Some wonderful comments there from everybody. Yes.
Yeah, first I want to say thank you. I always enjoy this, and I'm still mad we haven't taken this on the road because we got to do it in 60 different cities across the world. But no, I really enjoy you. I enjoy you as a person outside of just OCD, and I thank you for everything. People don't know the behind the scenes, but you reach out all the time. You're a great person. So thank you for everything. And honestly, I'm so excited for June 22nd, which feels like it's in 17 years, but I'm going to have you on my podcast, or not podcast, live stream. But I can't wait to have you on. It's always positive. And we'll be with Liz McInville, who we both like. So it'll be fun. Maybe not, because she's having a second kid. I don't know if I was supposed to say. Oh my God. Yeah. If I wasn't supposed to say, then please just pretend you didn't hear that. We'll just
delete that from the recording. Yeah.
Yeah. So if she is, then it might just be us two, which will be fine. But thank you so much for everyone. And real quick, before I say OCD SoCal, I just want to say to everybody that's watching this, like, I promise you, as somebody that lived through hell with this disorder, you can get better. Everything that Patrick is providing you, NoCD, is top of the line OCD treatment, and that's what you need, a specialist, and you're here where you can get it. So I still remember talking to Stephen at a talk we did at USC, and him talking about this app, and to see where it's come is amazing. I hope you all come out. OCD SoCal, we are a nonprofit throwing a huge event. I would say it's probably the second largest OCD conference out of the outside of the ICDF conferences. Mm-hmm. So we're really, really appreciative to everyone that comes out. So like it says in my name, OCD SoCal, just go to www.ocdsocal.org. You'll see where to register. You'll see our program, all the day's events. Patrick's talking on 2 panels, and we're just providing you with a bunch of virtual content that you can enjoy live and interact with all of the specialists talking about OCD and hear stories of success. And if you register for 60 days after, you can watch any of those back. So we hope you come out, and we don't want cost to be a factor. So lastly, email us, info@ocdsocal.org, and we will get you a scholarship to attend for free. So thank you so much for everybody having me on. And Patrick, it is always good seeing you.
Chris, it's always good to see you too. Thanks for being here. So have a good night, everyone. We'll see you again next week. Thank you, Paul Amelia, for a theme song. Be well.